Hello, I am Wesley Pritzlaff, and thank you for joining me on today's book talk where I'll review the historical fiction novel Scottsboro by Feldman. Scottsboro refers to the trials that began in 1931 when 9 Negro boys just outside of Scottsboro, Alabama were accused of raping 2 white Southern girls. Scottsboro is classified as historical fiction, although it does include aspects of romance, thriller, suspense, and drama all rolled into one. It truly is a great read. We'll get into Ellen Feldman's credentials a little bit later, but first, a preface before we begin the summary. No crime in American history, let alone a crime that never occurred, resulted in as many trials, convictions, reversals, and seminal Supreme Court decisions as the Scottsboro trials. Now, a plot summary of Scottsboro. As mentioned earlier, Scottsboro explains the story of 9 Negro boys' fight for freedom during the 1930s in Alabama, where Jim Crow laws were the law of the land in the South, and when everyone was trying to make ends meet in the United States during the Great Depression. Scottsboro is told from two people from their first point of view: Alice Whittier, a reporter and writer for the New Order in New York, and from Ruby Bates, the Southern prostitute that cried rape along with her friend Victoria Price. Ruby Bates and Victoria Price claimed that 9 Negro boys had raped them in order to save themselves after they illegally rode a freight train after looking for work in Chattanooga, Tennessee, back to Huntsville, Alabama. The boys are rushed in trial where all but one of them are sentenced to death by electrocution by an unjust jury. However, the Scottsboro boys are not forgotten by one unjust ruling of a Southern court. Demonstrations occur both in the northern United States as well as worldwide to fight for their freedom. The ILD, led by defense attorney Sam Leibowitz, the NAACP, Alice Whittier, and eventually Ruby Bates, who had a change of heart, are persistent in extending the fight for these boys. They appeal the ruling of the Scottsboro boys all the way to the Supreme Court not one, but multiple times. While the lively reporter Alice Whittier follows the trials, she becomes tangled in other historical happenings during the time, including the Bonus March and FDR's New Deal programs, as well as with her own love life and relationship with Ruby Bates. There are a lot of twists and turns throughout the Scottsboro boys' trials caused by biased judges and jurors, the inability of the state of Alabama to further fund the trials as they continue, as well as Ruby Bates' internal conflict about telling such a horrendous lie. But will the boys ever taste freedom? Ellen Feldman, the author of Scottsboro, initially began her career as a publisher, but has truly blossomed into a renowned historical fiction writer. Some of her other great works include The Boy Who Loved Anne Frank, Lucy, Next to Love, The Unwitting, and Terrible Virtue. Ellen Feldman is more than qualified to write this novel of the Scottsboro trials due to the tremendous amount of research she did. She read autobiographies from some of the 9 boys that were accused of rape, including Clarence Norris and Haywood Patterson. She also read eyewitness accounts of reporters during this time period about the trials, as well as used exact language from the transcripts of the courtroom in the novel. When asked in an interview with Anne Weisgarber what her goal was in writing historical fiction, Ellen Feldman responded that she wanted to dive deeper into the characters during this time. She did not by any means want to alter the history. That's why her novels are very accurate historically. She may alter the time period a little bit to add dramatic effect, but she would mention that. Other than that, her goal is to extrapolate the ideas and thoughts of the characters expressed during this time and let their inner voice shine out in her novels. Ellen Feldman is often asked, why did you choose Scottsboro and not another major historical happening during the time? And Feldman's response is, because people lack knowledge on it. When they hear of Scottsboro, they think of race and justice, but they really do not know that much more. Even people that have studied in school don't know much about it. It convulsed the nation during the 20th century, and its effects were felt worldwide, with demonstrations that occurred in London, Paris, Berlin, and Moscow. Her goal or purpose in writing the novel was to be informative, but at the same time tell through the eyes of the fun and lively character Alice Whittier in order to keep the reader engaged. Now we'll get into the evaluation of the text. How clearly is the book written? The book was written very clearly. At some points when it was told from the dialect of Ruby Bates, the Southern prostitute, it was still easy to understand. It wasn't hard to read. It was a quick read and very engaging. The only part that was a bit confusing is some of the locations of the events. Huntsville, Alabama, Decatur, Alabama, Scottsboro, and Payne Rock, Alabama were all prominent places. But at one point they mentioned the Carolina Yards, and I was confused if it was actually the name of a yard of a railroad in Alabama or if it was actually in North Carolina, because they mentioned that in the book as well. So that part could have been clarified. Did the author achieve his or her goal? Well, the goal of Ellen Feldman was to stay historically accurate while keeping the reader engaged, and yes, she definitely achieved that goal. What did the book leave out? I did further research on what actually happened during the Scottsboro trials, and the book covered it all. It covered the events leading up to the trial, the actual rulings of the court during the trial, the reversals, the appeals, all of that, as well as the fate of the 9 boys after the trials. So she was very accurate, historically accurate, and did not leave anything out. How did the book compare to others on the subject? Other books during this time include Scottsboro and Its Legacy, The Scottsboro Boys, The Civil Rights Movement, The Trial of the Scottsboro Boys, and Remembering Scottsboro, The Legacy of an Infamous Trial. These books dealt with more of the actual facts of the trial, have more of the transcript, and include their impact on society during that time, and how society was impacted throughout history as society progressed. While Ellen Feldman, she did include historically accurate information, but her goal wasn't to have a connection to society and all that. She wanted to just inform the readers while keeping them engaged, and she did this. So her book was a little different than the others, but I'd say it's more engaging than those. Are there any historical inaccuracies of the book? There are not. As mentioned earlier, she definitely did her homework and included everything about the trials as well as what happened before and after for the boys. Is there any obvious bias? Yes, bias is present during this novel, especially by the Southern jurors and Southern judges. Even though they know what is right, and even if they think that the boys didn't commit the crime, they still will rule with the majority and say that they did, because they're in fear of losing their property, of being seen as that person in the community. And that's what I'll get on the next question. What did you like best and least about the book? What I liked best was how it was told from 2 point of views. You get the Alice Whittier's point of view, the reporter from New York. You get her eyes, their analytical view, as well as her fun and engaging personality, as well as from Ruby Bates, a girl that's actually facing this internal conflict of telling a lie and whether she should come out about it or not. That was very interesting to read. And it was very easy to pick up at the beginning of each chapter who was going to be the narrator of that section. And what did you like least about the book? What I liked least about the book, it wasn't the writing style at all. It was some of the actual characters themselves. As I mentioned, the jurors and the judges, they didn't do what was right because they didn't want to be frowned upon by society. At one point, one of the doctors knows that the girls for sure were not raped, but he will not testify to it because he knows he will never be able to practice medicine again in the South, or maybe even the North. Some of the jurors also know that the girls were not raped. That's what they believe, but they will not admit to it because they would lose their land and they'd be frowned upon by society and looked as that guy. In conclusion, Scottsboro by Ellen Feldman was a great historical fiction novel that stayed true to the historical happenings during the Scottsboro Boys trials, as well as during other events that occurred in history during this time, including the Bonus March and FDR's New Deal. But it also kept you engaged, which was very nice. The recommended audience for this book would be young adult to older adult, due to some of the derogatory and strong language they used to describe the 9 Negro boys and some of the other Southern dialect as well. Also, during the trials, they discuss rape and sex, so that's intended for an older audience, as well as Alice Whittier's details about her romance life. I would definitely recommend this book to another person. I learned a lot about not only Scottsboro, but about life in general during the 1930s. I learned how prejudiced and biased the South were. I learned about FDR's New Deal programs, as well as the Bonus March. And Alice Whittier gets really close to Miss Roosevelt, so that's interesting. You learn a lot about that president as well. And what type of person would like this book? Anyone that's a lover of history and wants to learn more about the Scottsboro. The Southern dialect isn't hard to understand. It's a quick and engaging read. The 2 point of view, the 2 main characters that have a first person point of view is very interesting because you get the novel from 2 people's point of view. One that's seeing it from the outside in, and one that's actually involved in the case and involved in the lie, which is very interesting because you see it in 2 different perspectives that you wouldn't normally think of. And like I said, you really do learn a lot. It doesn't feel like you're learning at the time, but after further research, as I said, Ellen Feldman didn't leave out any big details, and she didn't alter them to make them false. She was very historically accurate. With all this tied together, especially it not only being historical fiction, but also a romance, thriller, drama, and suspense all wrapped in one, I say Scottsboro is a great novel, and I recommend it to everyone.